Hello and welcome to Outside View Scandals, the channel where history's controversies take center stage. Today we're diving into the scandalous tale of King Louis IX of France. Yes, the same Louis IX who is now better known as Saint Louis. But before we get to sainthood, let's explore the less than saintly controversies surrounding his participation in the Crusades. This is a story of piety, politics, and questionable priorities, with a touch of irony that history so often provides. To understand the scandal, we need to start with who Louis was. Born in 1214, Louis became King of France at the age of 12 after the untimely death of his father, Louis VIII. Under his reign, France flourished economically and culturally. Louis was known for his devotion to Christianity and for establishing laws that reflected his moral convictions. He founded hospitals, supported the poor, and even oversaw the construction of the magnificent Sainte-Chapelle. By all accounts, he seemed destined for a halo. But even the pious Louis wasn't immune to controversy, and that controversy came in the form of his enthusiastic participation in the Crusades. The Crusades, as we know, were a series of religious wars aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim rule. By the time Louis IX came into power, the Crusades were already losing their luster. The First Crusade had captured Jerusalem in 1099, but subsequent campaigns had been marked by failure, infighting, and, let's face it, a fair amount of greed disguised as religious fervor. So when Louis announced his intention to lead not one but two crusades, eyebrows were understandably raised. The first of these was the Seventh Crusade, launched in 1248. Louis poured enormous resources into the campaign, drained the French treasury, and imposing heavy taxes to fund his army. And now let's pause here for a moment. Imagine being a 13th century French peasant already struggling to make ends meet and being told that your hard-earned money is going to finance a war thousands of miles away. Not exactly a moral booster, is it? Louis and his forces set off for Egypt, which was considered the key to controlling the Holy Land. The idea was to weaken Muslim power at its core and pave the way for the eventual reconquest of Jerusalem. It sounded great on paper, but in practice, it was a disaster. In 1250, Louis' army was defeated at the Battle of Mansoura, and the king himself was captured. Yeah, you heard that right. The king of France was taken prisoner. Louis was eventually released, but only after France paid a massive ransom that, of course, further strained the already depleted treasury. Not exactly the glorious victory he had envisioned. But did Louis give up? Oh no, not Saint Louis. After returning to France and spending several years rebuilding his kingdom and reputation, he decided to try again. The Eighth Crusade was launched in 1270, this time targeting Tunis in North Africa. Why Tunis, you ask? Well, some historians speculate that Louis thought converting the Muslim ruler of Tunis to Christianity would create a domino effect in the region. Others suggest that he was simply trying to redeem himself after the fiasco in Egypt. Whatever the reason, the campaign ended in yet another failure. Louis died of dysentery shortly after arriving in Tunis, leaving his army leaderless and the crusade in shambles. So why was Louis IX's involvement in the crusade so controversial? Well, let's start with the sheer cost. The crusades were astronomically expensive, and the burden fell squarely on the people of France. Taxes were raised, debts were incurred, and resources that could have been used to improve life at home were instead funneled into these far-flung campaigns. It's fair to say that not everyone in France shared Louis' enthusiasm for these holy wars. And there's the question of motivation. Was Louis generally driven by religious devotion, or were there any other factors at play? On the surface, it seems clear that Louis was deeply pious. He wore a hair shirt, fasted regularly, and was known for his acts of charity. But some critics have pointed out that his crusading zeal also served political purposes. Leading a crusade elevated Louis' status on the international stage and reinforced his image as a defender of Christendom. In other words, it wasn't just about God, it was also about glory. And let's not forget the results, or lack thereof. Despite his best efforts, Louis' crusades achieved virtually nothing. Jerusalem remained under Muslim control, and the territories he did manage to capture were quickly lost. Some contemporaries and later historians have argued that his crusading adventures were a waste of resources and lives, achieving little more than a tarnished legacy. But here's where the irony comes in. Despite these failures, Louis IX was canonized as a saint just 27 years after his death. He remains the only French king to achieve sainthood, and his legacy as a devout Christian has often overshadowed the more problematic aspects of his reign. It's as if history decided to give him a free pass because, well, sainthood tends to do that. So what are we to make of King Louis IX and his scandalous crusades? On the one hand, you have a ruler who was undeniably devout and generally believed he was fulfilling God's will. On the other hand, you have a leader whose decisions drained his kingdom's resources and led to a catastrophic failure not only once on the battlefield. Was he a saintly king, misguided but sincere in his efforts? Or was he a leader whose personal ambitions and blind piety cost his people dearly? So what do you think? Was Louis IX a hero of faith, or do his crusades reveal a darker side to his reign? I'm really curious, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into history's most fascinating scandals. Thank you for watching Outside View Scandals again, and I'll see you in the next video. One of them is right here in the end screen.